Okay, so to brief start off with, I welcome everyone will be listening to my vlog with you, Professor. So today I'm joining with uh, Paul Peter Tuck, who is not just a scientist or a CEO. He's someone named one of the most inspiring people in life sciences and in featured on the power list of the world top 30 medicine makers. So what does a person like that actually do? So we'll meet and talk to Professor Paul Peter. As an academic, his work on the vagus nerve and inflammation was so pioneering. It helped launch the entire field of electronic medicine. Uh, and then at GSK, as their top immunology leader, he was the driving force behind getting a portfolio of new drugs across the finish line for patients from dermatology to infectious disease. And now he's the CEO of Candel Therapeutics. I think I'm spelling correctly.
Yes.
Where he took the company public and is applying his same disruptive philosophy to cancer. He believes in the industry has to pioneer new models to get therapies to patients faster, and he's built his entire career on that exact principle. So we are going to unpack all of that today. Huge welcome to Dr. Paul Peter. And did I miss anything, or you can add any special thing about you to introduce yourself much better than me?
No, this was a great introduction. I would just say I'm a physician scientist. I try to have an impact on patients' lives. I did that when I was treating patients for many, many years. I did that when I did academic research. And I do the same as a business leader, where I hope to develop medicines that may touch the life of millions of patients potentially. That's the hope that we have.
Okay, so this Candel thesis, this approach with viral immunotherapies to create an in-situ vaccination effect seems like fascinating in a field dominated by checkpoint inhibitors to cards. Why is this the right strategic bet for the future of cancer treatment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the advent of immune checkpoint inhibitors has been a real breakthrough in the understanding and also in the treatment of cancer. And rightly so, Nobel Prizes were given for this, right? Actually, one of them, of the Nobel Prize laureates, is Jim Allison, who is a member of our research advisory board. So this has been a breakthrough because it was shown that an immunotherapy can lead to long-term disease remission in patients. The problem is, this is only the case in a minority of the patients. So let's say maybe 1/3 of the patients. That means that this is still a huge unmet need. And we are interested in the question, can we convert non-responders to immune checkpoint inhibitors into responders by, for example, combining our viral immunotherapies that have a unique mechanism of action with immune checkpoint inhibitors. But the same is true for other treatments. We've shown that we can combine our lead compound, which is called CAN-2409, not only with immune checkpoint inhibitors, but also with radiotherapy, with chemotherapy, with surgery, when appropriate in the context of standard of care. So we have a lot of flexibility there. So we believe that this is a whole new approach where we induce a specific immune response against the patient's own tumor. Basically, we educate the patient's own immune system how to recognize and kill the tumor cells. And that's different from the immune checkpoint inhibitors that are more like a non-specific stimulation of the immune system. So we teach the T cells how to recognize and eliminate the tumor cells.
Okay, so we have seen promising data from Candel's programs in prostate cancer and glioblastoma. So, what has been the most exciting or the surprising clinical result for you personally? And what does that reveal about the platforms of potential?
Yeah, so we focus on diseases where there's basically hardly any competition because people don't touch it. And so I'll go through them because they're all important. We have a big program in early localized non-metastatic prostate cancer. So that's an area of huge unmet need. Prostate cancer is the second most common cause of cancer in men. And it's still a big unmet need. It affects the quality of life very significantly. But also, ultimately, although this is often a slowly growing tumor, this is still the second most common cause of mortality, of death due to cancer in men. And although many men will die with prostate cancer, for example, due to a heart attack or a stroke or something else, it is at the same time true that many patients die after prolonged follow-up because of prostate cancer. So this is a big unmet need. Everybody else is focused on more advanced disease, later stages. And the reason is that it takes a long time to get to the clinical outcome of your trial. The good news is we have done that. It took us more than 10 years to do the trial in early localized prostate cancer, where we focus on patients who basically want to eradicate their tumor. They want to get rid of their cancer, which is logical from an intuitive perspective, right? They don't want to live with cancer. They don't want to have fear of recurrence or cancer-related anxiety. They don't want to have the signs and symptoms due to progression of the tumor or the side effects of hormonal therapy, that's like chemical castration, which may lead to prolongation of life, but it is at the same time with a rather impaired quality of life. So that's the problem that we try to solve, and we focus on the patients who choose radiotherapy. And then we have combined our lead asset, CAN-2409, compared to placebo, and we've shown a 30% improvement in disease-free survival. That means no evidence of cancer whatsoever. This is a great outcome. So it has surprised us that it was so positive. If you focus on prostate cancer specific disease-free survival, then it looks even better. And then we have a 38% improvement. And this is also supported by other secondary endpoints. So a beautiful result. We are preparing biological license application, BLA. That means we will seek approval by the regulators in the US, the FDA. That's still a little bit of work, a little bit more than a year, because now we need to scale up commercial manufacturing, and then you need to put the product on stability. You need to show that it is stable in the fridge and in the freezer, etc. And then that whole package of clinical data and manufacturing data will be submitted. The planning is a little bit more than 1 year from now. So we seek approval there. The second is we have amazing data in a small randomized trial in pancreatic cancer, also area of huge unmet need. And in this small randomized trial, we look at overall survival. Two patients who get our medicine, our investigational medicine, live longer. And the answer is yes. We have shown a median overall survival in the patients who received CAN-2409 plus standard of care of 32 months, compared to only 12.5 months in the control group that received the same standard of care, but no CAN-2409. All of that is supported by beautiful biomarker research. We can show that we fundamentally changed the so-called tumor microenvironment. We convert a so-called cold tumor from an immunological point of view, where there are no immune cells, into a hot tumor, where there's a lot of inflammation and immune cells that are starting to target the cancer cells. So that has surprised us, because this has been an area of great disappointment for many other investigational medicines. And then we have also beautiful data in therapy-resistant non-small cell lung cancer. So most patients who have lung cancer will have a specific type called non-small cell lung cancer. We focus on the patients who have received these immune checkpoint inhibitors, conventional immunotherapies. They will have failed typically chemotherapy. We focus on patients who have largely metastatic disease, progressive disease, and they have a very poor prognosis. You can imagine that they failed everything. The tumors are growing throughout the body. And we gave them 2 administrations of CAN-2409 while not changing the immune checkpoint inhibitor treatment. And we could show a doubling of the expected median overall survival. So we can basically convert progressive cancer into a chronic disease with an acceptable quality of life. So that's all for the lead asset called CAN-2409. Then we have a second asset, CAN-3110, that works in a slightly different way. There's a dual mechanism. It's a replication-competent virus. It's a herpes simplex virus. It will replicate in the tumor while sparing the healthy tissue. And we've tested it, and we are testing it in probably the most difficult to treat form of cancer, which is recurrent high-grade glioma, brain cancer. So most of these patients will have recurrent glioblastoma. So they have failed neurosurgical resection, they failed chemotherapy, they failed radiotherapy. So they've run out of options. And then we gave them just a single injection of CAN-3110 into the tumor. It's actually a relatively simple procedure, it takes 45 minutes in daycare. And we have shown again doubling of the expected median overall survival. We've published this in a top journal. And very soon we expect new data where we will learn about what happens actually in the brain, because we took serial brain biopsies after repeated injections. And we will also have an update on the clinical activity data in the very near future. So all of these have surprised me in a pleasant way, I have to say, Yasumi, because many people try to stay away from these indications because it has been a graveyard for the industry. We try to focus on the indications where we see the biggest unmet need for patients.
Okay, it's massive and it's very amazing to talk with you about these things. So your career is a unique bridge between chronic inflammation and cancer immunotherapy. Can see. So from your perspective, what's the most profound connection the scientific world is now seeing between these two fields?
Yeah, that's a great question. I spent a lot of time in my career on actually inhibiting the immune system in the context of autoimmune disease. So think of conditions like rheumatoid arthritis or psoriatic arthritis or psoriasis and Sjogren's syndrome, lupus, what have you, right? I had a long academic career as a professor of internal medicine and rheumatology. So I'm an immunologist who understands the immune system, but I had the main angle of actually inhibiting the immune system because the immune system attacks the own body in autoimmune disease. But you can use the same biology to activate the immune system in cancer. I gave the example of pancreatic cancer. We have these very cold tumors. It's sometimes called an immunological desert because you see hardly any immune cells. And after CAN-2409 administration, we see that there's massive infiltration by immune cells that start to attack the tumor cells. So what I'd like to do is use the same biology to solve different problems. I'll give you a very specific example. I've been very interested in my career in autoimmune disease, in certain immunological structures in inflamed tissues called tertiary lymphoid structures. Apologies for the technical term, that's how they're called. They're like little lymphoid organs, for example, in the joint of patients with rheumatoid arthritis, and I try to get rid of them. And the same is true for Sjogren's syndrome, right? That's a disease primarily affecting the salivary glands. You see this typical tertiary lymphoid structures. So my chief scientific officer, Dr. Francesca Barona, and myself are both rheumatologists. We have worked both in this field. Now we try to do the opposite because we understand the biology. We have created a new virus, which is still preclinical. It's not in patients yet. But we have designed a herpes simplex virus that delivers multiple genes to the tumor that will actually create these tertiary lymphoid structures. And we've shown in experimental models that leads to anti-tumor activity. So I think that's a great example how you can use the same science almost, but then in an opposite way, depending on what you try to achieve.
Great, Professor. So at CTRIL, you are targeting neutrophil extracellular traps, and which are implicated in both autoimmune diseases and cancer metastasis. So how do insights from a company like Citril inform the work you're doing at Candel and vice versa?
Yeah, you're speaking about Citril, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So yes, I'm the chair of the board of a company based in the Netherlands called Citril, which is focused on NETosis, which plays a role in the role of neutrophils, a specific immune cell, in immunoinflammation and immune-mediated inflammatory diseases like rheumatoid arthritis. If you think about what happens in the joints of patients with rheumatoid arthritis, there's the tissue that is inflamed. It's called synovial tissue. But then there's also fluid, right? You can see that these joints are swollen and painful, and these patients have impaired function. And if you put a needle into the synovial fluid compartment and you take the fluid out and you analyze the cells, then actually most of the cells are neutrophils in the synovial fluid compartment. And most currently available treatments do not really target the neutrophils. There are many successful treatments like TNF blockers and others that have a great effect on cells like T cells and macrophages and B cells, what have you. But they may not have sufficient effects on neutrophils. And there's still, despite the availability of all these treatments since the late 90s, there's still a huge unmet need in a disease like rheumatoid arthritis, because at any time point, about half of the patients will still have persistent disease. So at Citril, we are focused on a whole new mechanism, which is interfering with NETosis, which will have an effect on the role, the destructive and pro-inflammatory effect of the neutrophils in this disease. So we focus on rheumatoid arthritis, but we don't believe that this will be limited to rheumatoid arthritis. We're also testing other immune-mediated inflammatory diseases. So while there's a big unmet need in rheumatoid arthritis, this is also like an enabling indication to show that if this works, it's quite likely that it might also work in other inflammatory conditions. So that's what we are going to test at Citril. Company's making great progress. We are already in patients. So we'll get to announce it, I think, in the near future.
Okay. Yeah. So, and does your work across these domains lead you to a more unified theory of immune dysregulation, or are we seeing the emergence of a common root cause philosophy in medicine?
The line is not completely optimal. You're speaking about immune dysregulation in which diseases? In general, or? What is exactly your question about immune dysregulation? Because the line was not great, so I could not hear it completely.
I'm sorry. Does your work across these domains lead you to a more unified theory of immune dysregulation, or are we seeing the root cause of common root cause philosophy in medicine?
Yeah, I think many of the diseases that we are focused on are multifactorial. And there are elements, this is true for both oncology and immunoinflammation. This is caused by genetic factors, this is caused by environmental factors. Think of pollution, for example, which could play a role in conditions like rheumatoid arthritis. There's a role of lifestyle. And maybe I should elaborate a little bit on that. Because you mentioned my previous work on the vagus nerve and the field of bioelectronics. So the vagus nerve is a nerve that originates in the brainstem, and it wanders around throughout the body, right? It goes to your heart, where it determines heart rate, it has an impact on your lungs, on your respiration, on your gut function, etc. But interestingly, it also has a role in controlling inflammation. The vagus nerve is able to sense inflammation in the body. It leads to a signal to the brain, that's called an afferent signal. And then subsequently, the brain will give an efferent signal back to the body to try to control inflammation. And we found by following people, I should not call them patients, people who are at risk of developing rheumatoid arthritis based on things you can measure in the blood, autoantibodies, etc. And they have in general like a 40% chance of developing rheumatoid arthritis in 2 years. we found that one of the independent predictors of the subsequent development of rheumatoid arthritis, so clinical signs and symptoms of inflammation in the joint, was actually the vagus nerve tone, the activity of the vagus nerve. And you can measure that by measuring heart rate variability. And you, in a more simple way, you can even measure this by looking at resting heart rate. So I don't know whether you used a wearable like a Fitbit or something, but then you get your daily result for the resting heart rate. So if you have a high resting heart rate, you have a higher chance of developing a disease like rheumatoid arthritis after a few years, if you are at risk of that disease, than when you have a low function of the vagus nerve. So I spoke about genetic factors, environmental factors, also lifestyle factors, including exercise. Exercise will have an impact on your autonomic nervous system, including the vagus nerve. Diet, which also plays a role in the composition of the gut microbiome. So a human body is actually a superorganism consisting of mammalian cells, the human cells, but also of trillions of microbial cells. So that's a strange idea, right? You have more microbial cells in your body than mammalian cells, than human cells. And that makes the body, the human body, so that's why I call it a superorganism consisting of completely different cells. And it has become increasingly clear that all kinds of things happen in the gut microbiome. These bacteria are not just sitting there, they produce all kinds of factors that may be pro-inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. So all of this plays a role. We know that from autoimmune diseases may play a role, not only in immune-mediated inflammatory diseases, but probably also in cancer. For example, it's known that the probability that you will respond to an immune checkpoint inhibitor is also dependent on the composition of the gut microbiome. So that's an amazing discovery. This is all early research. And it's also becoming clear that the nervous system may play a role in cancer and in the development of metastases. So I think it's very important to think about humans in a very holistic way. So are these diseases, is dysfunction increasing? Probably because of another factor as well, which is aging. Right? Actually, it's a good thing that people get older, not in every part of the world, unfortunately, but generally lifespan has been extended. That means that you become more prone to diseases like autoimmune diseases, but also more to cancer. In the end, you need to die of something. So there will be more DNA damage over time. So like prostate cancer, the prevalence will go up in the first place because people get older.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor. And you have been a scientist, a CSO, CEO, and a board director. In your view, what's the single biggest bottleneck in translating a brilliant lab discovery into medicine that helps patients? And how have you worked to overcome those kind of bottlenecks?
Well, that's again a very interesting question. I think the biggest hurdle is that we live in a sort of echo chamber where everybody looks at each other, which inhibits true innovation. And I've been in that position many, many times in my life, I have to say. So in the 90s, I was working on my PhD. I was a physician working on the PhD at the Leiden University Medical Center in the Netherlands. And we tested many new experimental therapies at the time for rheumatoid arthritis. This was a time when there was hardly anything, right? The patients could get corticosteroids like prednisolone, the low dosages of methotrexate, but many patients ended up with very severe joint destruction. Sometimes they were admitted to the hospital for long, prolonged periods of time. You don't see that anymore. And that they would undergo orthopedic surgery, etc. And we tested these antibodies, hoping that we could reduce inflammation. And I have to say, in an early stage of my career, all these trials were completely negative. right? We tested all kinds of things that did not work. And I remember people telling me, very senior people, famous professors, Paul Peter, and antibody therapy will never work for rheumatoid arthritis. And then we worked together with the Kennedy Institute in the UK, in England, which was then based in London. They're now in Oxford. And they took the initiative for a new experimental trial with an investigational medicine called CA2. And we participated in that trial in Leiden. And it was placebo-controlled, randomized, so we did not know who got active treatment or not. But we saw just miracles. We saw people sitting in wheelchairs who could suddenly walk again, right? Not in everybody. Nothing works in everybody. But we had never seen that, so we knew there was a medicine there. CA2 became later known as infliximab or Remicade, which became one of the best-selling medicines ever in history. And the interesting cycle of life is that now I'm a member of the board of trustees of the Kennedy Institute many years later. So that's an example. Another example is we, in a completely unprecedented or unplanned manner, discovered the role of the vagus nerve, to come back to this, in chronic inflammation. There was amazing research done in the US by a scientist called Kevin Tracy, who had tested the concept in acute models of inflammation, like sepsis models, in mice. We were initially not aware of his work. We were looking for something completely different. And then everything worked, actually. We focused on chronic inflammation. We tested it in mice and in rats and in vitro, in a lab, in culture. And then we went almost straight to humans. I went to the neurosurgeons. I worked at the academic medical center at the time of the University of Amsterdam. I said, are you able to implant a device that stimulates with an electrical signal the vagus nerve? And they said, yeah, we can do that because we've done it for therapy-resistant epilepsy. It was approved by the FDA for that. So I wanted to test whether it could work in therapy-resistant rheumatoid arthritis. So I was like a key opinion leader in rheumatology in those days. I was a professor in Amsterdam. I called my colleagues, the key opinion leaders in other countries, said, I have this great idea, I believe, and we have beautiful data that are very encouraging. Do you want to participate in the trial? None of my big friends actually participated at the time because I think they did not believe it. This is about new paradigms, and it's very difficult to find support for it. Well, in the end, we enrolled most of the patients ourselves. We found a few other excellent centers in Middle Europe. We published the data, and then everybody jumps on it. All of this has been replicated. I'm very happy to say that there's a company in the US called SetPoint that has played a key role in the development of this approach with a new device that they developed. And recently the FDA approved this year. So this is now an approved therapy. And now you see all the big names on these papers. So now at Candel Therapeutics, I work on viral immunotherapies, to come back to that. And 5 years ago, it was very difficult to even raise money for it because people said, we have never seen an example where such an approach would work. And I would say that's a feature of innovation that nobody's ever seen it, right? Otherwise, it's a Me Too approach. So now it's different because we've consistently delivered positive data, including a very large randomized placebo-controlled trial in prostate cancer, as we discussed, 745 patients. The data do not lie, so now people are interested. So this is the biggest thing hindering progress in science in general. It's the world of paradigms. It's the fact that many people are looking at each other. It's one big echo chamber. And there are few original voices that are able to look at the data and say, well, actually, maybe there's a signal here, right? And maybe we need to do the experiment and get to do a clear killer experiment. If we cannot confirm it, we'll stop it and move on. Many new treatments, new approaches will not work. But too many things are stopped based on beliefs rather than based on real science and data, and that's holding it back.
Got it. Professor, you have led academic departments, massive R&D organizations at GSK, and now founder-led biotechs. How has your leadership philosophy evolved? And what is the one constant principle you rely on regardless of the organization size?
Yeah, I actually, sometimes I get the question, you've done very different things in your life. And my answer is always, I always do the same things. I started by saying I'm a physician scientist and my goal in life is to improve patients' lives. That's why I became a physician and a doctor. But from a business perspective and a leadership perspective, I've always used the same principles. Of course, they have evolved over time, and you may need to adjust them to a certain extent based on a specific setting. Like at the AMC, Academic Medical Center of the University of Amsterdam. This is a huge center, right, in Europe. And interestingly, when I came, there was no department of clinical immunology and rheumatology. So at a young age, I became the professor of internal medicine, in particular rheumatology. I became the head of the department. But it sounded greater than it was because I had no personnel, I had no patients, I had hardly any budget. So I was really a king without a country. I built that whole department to, when I left 12 years later, we had 140 FTEs, right? 140 people basically working there, including biotech company. And it was based on the leadership principles that I later used on a larger scale at GSK and now also at Candel. And it is about have a clear mission, what you try to achieve. Bring in the best people. Everybody who reports to me should be better than I am. Right? Otherwise, why would I hire them in their specific field? And then make sure that they work together as a team. Right? We are not a family. We are like a super sports team, where sometimes people will sit on the bench actually, and sometimes people will play. But it's also about getting over your ego. None of this is about who is famous or who is right. I don't care at all. We want to be successful as a team. Think about football, right, that we call it in Europe, or soccer, as we call it in the US. Ultimately, you want to get the ball into the goal, and you really don't care which player will get it there. So you need to create a system where people are willing to really support each other. So that's a very important principle. So create a culture of high-performing team behaviors, to say it more in leadership terms, is very important. Then the whole culture that you create is very important. How can you foster a culture of creativity? Also a culture where people are in it for the long term, that you don't burn them out. Sometimes it's very busy in my departments because we do so many things. But at the same time, you need to make sure that you can step back, right, and that people can reconnect also with their family and their friends and themselves actually, to be able to stay creative and productive in the long term. A lot of this is about decision making. How can you make sure that you optimize the process of decision making? Can you make sure that you see the next big thing? To come back to the theme of paradigms, right? How do you make sure that you don't just the Me Too stuff? That's not going to be transformative. It's also about being very rigorous. If you believe that data, like develop a medicine and there is some effect, but it's not potentially transformative, just stop it. So that's a great way to increase your overall probability of success, to get rid of everything that is so-so. So these are difficult decisions. And then I'm a big fan of independent peer review. Also, when you're a world expert in a specific field, you need to assume that you have blind spots and that there are things that you do not see. So I like to surround myself with the best people who give me peer review. At GSK, I created the external immunology board with the who is who in immunology, and I could call them every time, and we did amazing things together. At Candel, I created the research advisory board with people like, I mentioned already, Jim Allison, the Nobel Prize laureate. He's the father of the field of immune checkpoint inhibitors. Very recently, Carl June joined us. He's the father of the field of CAR T cells, also major breakthrough in oncology. But also other big names like Liz Jeffy and Roy Herbst and Henry Brem and others. So there's Phil Kentoff. So these people make sure that we have the right decision-making process to participate in our internal governance process. And then it's also important to do team building and have fun together, right? We spend a lot of time together, so better feel right. And also having fun sounds like a soft something, right? But actually it may help to unleash creativity and to build trust. Trust is very important. It's the basis of everything. You need to be able to trust that you do what you say that you do. You need to be able to make sure that everybody has high levels of transparency, integrity, etc. So these are some of the principles that I've consistently used on a relatively small scale in academia, although it was a big department, but then on a very large scale at GSK. Candel is a very small company. We have today 53 employees. We're growing a little bit, but we try to be smart and not end up with a huge fixed headcount, but we use exactly the same principles, but then at a fast pace.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, as you told, like we have to be with the people like with the same mindsets and like people who can learn and all. So since you talk about the team building and all, so how do you personally, like I can see that um, this is like giving this dedication and all those things will be like will give the space to burnout, and also like it will be a stressful thing. So to avoid that, how do you personally disconnect and recharge back and maintain your well-being to avoid burnout and sustain the creativity within you? And what advices you would give the young scientists and executives in your orbit to maintain that?
Yeah, well, we have a little bit of everywhere where I work hard, work hard, play hard culture. That's so in academia, we were known as the department that would go out at congresses, we would present, we would chair sessions, and we were very visible. And then if there was a party, my whole department was dancing and having fun. So we like to work hard and play hard. I think that's important. I think as a leader, you need to lead by example. When I joined Candel, or the predecessor of Candel, the legacy company, I noticed that many people in the US take very little time off. But I think it's typically like 2 weeks. But then many people even don't take 2 weeks per year because they're afraid that they're going to lose their job if they do that. So that's not okay. So I said, well, we're going to change the vacation policy. And in principle, there's no formal maximum to the number of days that you can take. And first, people did not really believe it, or maybe they did not trust me. I thought that there must be a trick here, right? But there isn't. I said, if you work very hard, and then maybe once in a few years you believe that you need to go for 3 or 4 years to Thailand or whatever, to go away with your family, discuss it with your manager. If you can make it work, then that's fine. Of course, the work, there needs to be continuity in the work. So I lead by example, because I would send them pictures with Christmas that I was actually in the middle of nowhere in Botswana or in Lapland, right in the upper north of Finland, with my family. So they knew that it was real. This year I've not been great at leading by example because I had planned vacation and it failed completely, because this has been such a busy year for me and also for my organization. In a way, we've become victim of our success because all our data have been positive. So that means a lot of work, and we need to write it up, and we need to interact with the regulators, with the FDA, and we need to raise money as we did. So it has been quite, this is a temporary situation, I think. But over time, we need to make sure that people also get time back, right, to reflect and to invest in themselves. So therefore, we decided to grow a little bit from, I think, 37 to 53 people. That gives some relief. Actually, that's still an extremely low number if you realize all the things that we are doing. The trick is that we also work with in an externalized model. So, for example, manufacturing takes place at the so-called CDMO manufacturing facility in California called SAFC, Merck Millipore. We brought in the top team to oversee it. but most of the work is done actually at SAFC. Now we're getting ready for the BLA submission, hoping for approval next year. Meanwhile, we do a lot of pre-commercialization activities. So rather than doing all of that ourselves, we work with 3 external parties, and we've created like an organic ecosystem doing this, so you can switch it on and off. So these are some ideas about how to do this. And personally, what do I do? But I do try to go away for vacation with my family, 4 children, adult children. Also important for us to reconnect. I do go to the gym. I do try to listen to music and do other things. It's very important to activate different parts of your brain, actually. Ultimately, it also makes you a better scientist and a better leader.
Yeah, that's actually great. And so, since we are coming to the end of our conversation, if you could solve one single medical problem in your lifetime with a guarantee of success, what would it be, and why you're going to choose that?
I hope, I hope that I have improved the life of many patients with autoimmune disease as a doctor actually treating them. I felt very engaged and responsible and was always there for my patients. I think I've made a big contribution to the field of science in rheumatology to improve the science. In this phase of my life, I'm very much focused on the most difficult to treat forms of cancer. So for me, it would be like a dream to really have an impact on patients with prostate cancer. I mean, prostate cancer runs in my own family. I've seen this very close by, not only as a physician, but also much closer by. I've lost very good friends to pancreatic cancer. I've lost a very good friend, a colleague, to glioblastoma. I've lost somebody who was close to me due to therapy-resistant non-small cell lung cancer. So all of this means a lot to me on many levels, including on a deeply emotional level. So I hope that at the end of the career, I can look at myself in the mirror and think, well, maybe I've helped future patients. I don't care about that people even know about this, right? But I think everybody has his or her own responsibility in life to use their talents in the best way possible to make the world a better place.
Yeah, as you told, like even I have lost my friends, my family, lost one of my uncles died of cancer. Likewise, blah. So the job you're doing is like wonderful, and like we all are grateful for what you guys are trying to achieve and all. So it will be helping to serve the lives of people actually, and it's a very sensitive topic as well. We are here to talk about that. And looking back to your incredible journey from a resident in internal medicine to where you are today, what's one piece of advice you would give to your younger self just starting out?
Yeah, so different people will give different advice, but what I've always done is I've never had a real career plan. That may sound strange, but I've always followed my intuition. I think that's very important, right? Try to understand your intuition. It's a deep way of intelligence, I believe, subconscious processing almost, but then test it in a systematic way because your intuition may be wrong. And I try to be very systematic also about my decision making, as I mentioned. So intuition is step 1. Step 2 is like internal peer review, where you try to write down almost the pros and cons of any decision. And the third is talk to people that you trust. I gave formal examples of my research advisory board and external immunology board. But for example, when I made the decision to join Candel Therapeutics, I also called a few people that I just trust and asked for their views, right? So that's important. Try to have an impact that's positive for the world, right? Because you can work very hard, but it's actually nicer to have a positive impact. And have fun in life, right? To make the best of it with the people who are close to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Doctor. Finally, what emerging technology or scientific concepts, perhaps something like the intersection of AI and biology, you oversee in your multimorbidity work, and are you most excited about that you believe will redefine medicine in the next decade?
Well, AI is going to have such a big impact that you can hardly understand how big that impact is going to be, right? You can hardly see it. So that clearly explains my position. It's very important. We use it in our discovery platform, where we look at human tumors, deeply analyze the data, then use computational biology and artificial intelligence to predict what we try to change to the tumor microenvironment to have an impact in a specific problem in oncology. And then we say, okay, we need to deliver these genes to change that. Then we test that in the lab, whether we can confirm what we have predicted in silico using AI. And then we clone these genes into a herpes simplex virus. So it's like an in vivo gene therapy approach, where the selection of genes is strongly influenced by AI. But also in our clinical trials, we now use AI to deeply interrogate our data and to understand it in the best way possible. So AI is going to touch every aspect of life. It's very difficult to see how big that impact is going to be, but I have no doubt it's going to be huge, and it will transform drug discovery and development.
Thank you, Doctor. Actually, it was a wonderful and very informative conversation I had with you today. I know there's a lot more to discuss. Since the time permits, I think I can catch you up on another day for another conversation as well when you have some free time. I know you are a super busy person with your organization and with the work you are doing. You need your time, you need your space and all. So, and I'm for grateful for accepting my invitation also, like with a quick time and all. Yeah. Uh, Thank you very much, Doctor. So, I'll stop the log there. So,
Yeah,
actually,
yeah, it was a great
yeah.
pleasure.